Hello everybody, it's Seaweed Snail and today I want to tell you the story of my haunted apartment that I was living in since I was 10 years old, around 10 years old. I might be a little bit younger when we first moved in. So let's first start with the story of said apartment. It's really old, it's around 150 years old, so it's, old, not like, 50 years old, no, it's 150 years old, around that. It might be a little bit older, but there is no data that survived World War II about how old this place really is, so we only knew that based off the photos of the city. So since it is that old of a place, we don't know how many people have died because it is not public record. I know that in another countries like in the USA, I think it's public record, but it's not in Poland. And we don't really have a lot of documents in my city because almost everything was destroyed during World War II. So we don't have a lot of records, and it wasn't, when I was researching it, it wasn't common to really have a record of dead people in Prussia, because at the time it wasn't even Poland, it was Prussia, it was part of the Germany. So you can look it up if you're interested in Polish history for some reason. But there's one confirmed murder that took place just outside that building. It was just outside the window of my apartment because I live on the ground floor and this was just outside. So in 1933, I have it written there because there's no way I would remember, the Nazis killed Paul Kluth. I really don't know how to pronounce German names, even though I had Germany in school. I was learning German for 6 years and I still don't know anything about it. But he was the leader of the German Communist Workers' Youth. So yeah, and it was a political murder and he was shot just outside that apartment. So that's one confirmed death, but since people were dying in the apartments, not really in the hospitals in 19th century, I think there were more deaths, and at the beginning of 20th century as well, also war. So, Another fun fact about my building is that there is a cemetery right behind it. It was set just at the end of the war in 1945. And it's one of the biggest cemeteries in my city because we have a lot of them and we have a lot of ex-cemeteries. In fact, when you cross the street just in front of my building, there is a park that also used to be a cemetery, but it's really old one. There are no gravestones, no nothing, but I know from my history teacher from my high school that when they were building, I think they were doing something with the water or with the internet cables, I'm not sure, but they found coffins there. So they just removed the gravestones, not the actual bodies, like they were supposed to be. Like they were supposed to do, not to be. About that apartment, that exact place, my grandmother found it actually, because my parents were looking for a bigger place to live because there are 5 of us, like my mother, my father, my brother and my sister and me, so it's 5 of us. And we are living in 2 rooms, so we could have a bigger apartment that way, but it was empty. And I think that one of my grandmother's friend actually found it, and they had to actually look for the owner of that place because nobody knew who was it owning, and it was empty for like 5 years before my parents bought it and we moved in. So they first needed to find the family of women who were living there before us, and for what my parents found out from our neighbors and for people that knew that woman, she most likely died there in her own bed of old age. She was really old, and then her son, I believe, became the owner of that place, but he didn't really wanted it and didn't knew what to do with it, so it was just left empty for, I believe it was like 5 years or something. I'm not really sure. And then they painted the walls, get some good. When we first moved in, that whole place was a mess. So there were even holes in the ground that you can just stand and look to the basement, and there were rat nests in those holes. So my parents first needed to get rid of the rats, fix the floor so nobody would fall into the basement. And yeah, we had really old glass windows, like when you took your hand you can feel the wind coming in, and there were no heating from the city and no warm water, so there were 2 big stoves. So there were 2 big tiled stoves to warm up the whole apartment, like, you know, the old-fashioned ones when you had to take the coal or the wood and you needed to burn it to have some warmth. And the funny thing is that there was a wall, and both of those stoves were on the opposite sides of the wall, and they were hitting that one wall, so I mean, it wasn't really that warm, but it was warm. And then we didn't have warm water, so we needed to have, in order to have warm water, to have something called boiler. I will check how it's called in English. Yeah, it's boiler. So it's that thing that you have in your bathroom to warm the water to your bath, essentially. So, and it is really important for me to tell you how this apartment was laid out, so you can understand the whole story. So, when you walked in, there's a kitchen. Like, there was no like corridor or anything, you walked straight to the kitchen. Then there was a door, and it was a big room when my parents were sleeping, because it's common in Poland that parents don't really have their own bedroom. They sleep like in the salon, in the living room. Yeah, so it was living room, dining room, and my parents' bedroom in one whole big room. Then there was a door, and it was another big room. It was my sister and my brother's bedroom, and then there was a bathroom. And if you opened all of the doors, there was that platform, and on that platform there was a toilet. It was hilarious, I tell you. So it all started when we first moved in, but we weren't really that concerned because my family had their fair share of paranormal things happening. So, you know, we're not really scared of some walking on the apartment when everybody is asleep, or some hearing some whispers, some voices, like things moving and changing their places. Like, that's not really a big deal. Like, nobody's scared of that. That's kind of normal. Then there was this really odd smell, like somebody was smoking cigarettes, and nobody in my family smoke. So it was kind of weird, but you know, it's still that the smell could travel from your neighbor or something. The same with the, you know, footsteps or voices. You can just be hearing your neighbor and not be aware. But then my parents started doing some bigger changes to the apartment, so they got rid of tile stoves, because those are really dangerous, and also you need to wake up at the 5 in the morning to take the wood or coal and just burn it, and it's just this whole ordeal. So they changed it to the gas stove. It's safer. It's not the safest option ever, I know, but it's safer. It's not so messy. Then they changed the floors. They took all of the old floors and changed to the new ones, because, you know, you want pretty new floor in your apartment. And oh boy, what was under those floors? There were hairs, like weird, like if somebody could, about that amount of somebody's hair, tied it up and put it under the floors. There were some old newspapers in German, so we don't know what those newspapers were about, but there was a lot of those hair and nails, so it looked like somebody did something pretty bad in here, like some kind of ritual or some kind of curse, because I came from a long line of witches, and I can tell that if somebody buries hairs and nails under the floors, there was something bad going on. And then things started to escalate, so we still had that boiler in our bathroom, and the burn marks started to appear on it. So I told you before that we were all smelling this cigarette smoke, and nobody was smoking in the apartment. And then the weird burn marks, like if you took a cigarette and burned it onto the boiler, that marks started to appear on it, and it was creepy. I won't lie, it was really creepy and it was weird, but we really didn't pay that much attention to it because our family way of dealing with paranormal is just do not give it your attention and it will all go away. Just ignore it. Ignore it, and that way you are not giving it any more power, and it doesn't have anything to feed off, so it will just go away. That's what we hoped. We also had a cat at that time, and she started to act extremely weird. She was really sweet, outgoing cat. She loved everybody, and then she started to change. She was really aggressive. She was started to get really aggressive and scared, and she was peeing everywhere. And it was not like she was like having her heat or anything. She just started to pee everywhere. She started to be extremely scared. She would spend her whole days under the bed, and my parents were trying to help her in any way, shape or form that they could, because we love that cat. So they took her to the vet. The vets checked her. Everything was fine. They were trying everything, changing her cuvées, her food. There was a cat behaviorist involved, and nothing helped. And she was really getting worse and worse. She wasn't like herself. So my parents decided to give that cat to their friend. And when that cat left our home, it was complete 180. She was like herself again, loving, purring, playing with everybody. We would come to visit her and she would love us. But when she was... So my parents came to the conclusion that something in our apartment was making her really scared and really aggressive. So that's why she's really happy now. Don't worry about the cat. She lives with it was a long time ago, and she since have passed of old age, but she was really loved and she was really happy her whole life. So don't worry about the cat. Nothing bad happened to that cat, okay? Don't worry. So all of a sudden the atmosphere started to change as well. So it was getting like visibly darker. No matter how clean the windows were and how big they were, it was starting to get darker and darker and darker, and this didn't make a whole lot of sense because it was summer, so it shouldn't be that dark. And it also was like creepier and creepier, and everybody felt really anxious. It was just weird feeling, like you felt like you were watched like all the time, and it was really scary and it was weird. And then we stopped smelling cigarettes. We started smelling this foul odor, like rotting flesh, rotting fish or eggs to be exact. And we looked everywhere. There was nothing, like nobody dropped an egg behind the counter, and there was no rotting fishes anywhere. It was really creepy. And it stopped being like, you know, you would hear whispers just once in a while and footsteps just once in a while. It was full on all the time. Not only in the night, but in the day as well. So we'd be sitting all in the living room, on our parents' room, and watching TV, and all of a sudden we would hear somebody walking in our room. And we were all in the living room, so it didn't make any sense. Then we started to hear cabinets closing and openings, like banging on the doors, banging on the walls. So it started to get really bad at that point. One day my mom was home alone. She was laying on the couch reading some book, and all of a sudden she got hit by a pillow. Like, she was laying in bed just peacefully reading some book, and all of a sudden just bam, with a pillow. And that was the point where my parents were like, oh no, we need to really do something with it, because ignoring is not working anymore, okay? We lost our cat, we cannot sleep peacefully because there is this banging and walking and talking. And my mother got hit with a pillow. With a pillow, so it wasn't, nothing bad happened to her, but it was scary. Like, everybody would be startled when you just home alone reading a book and all of a sudden there's flying pillows. In the meantime, my parents got really close with local priests. They really get involved in the church, so they invited the priest over, and so the priest came, blessed the place, prayed and all of that thing. And things really didn't seem to stop. And I believe it was like a couple days after that blessing. It was middle of the night and everybody was sleeping. And my father got woken up because he heard some noise, some really weird noise. So he woke up and he see that really small figure, some small black figure. He thought it was like this big, really small, like almost like a child. But at first he thought that it was me or my brother or my sister, but we weren't really that small at that time. So I was 11, my brother was 10, my sister was 9, so we weren't like that kind of small children anymore. But he woke up and he see that figure, so I don't know what was that. He saw that figure dragging a poof. If you don't know what a poof is, because I'm not sure if it's that same. And he see that small figure dragging a poof. I will insert a picture of what that figure was dragging if you don't know what that is, because even when I speak to some of my Polish friends, they also don't know what I'm talking about, so I will just insert the picture of it. He got up from bed, he switched the light on, and bam, there's nobody here. And sure enough, there is poof in the middle of the room. And it was standing in the whole different place when he was going to sleep. And he was really confused. So he was like, maybe I just didn't see clearly and it was one of my children, because maybe they are not sleeping and they are playing in the middle of night. So we went to our room, like took all of our covers and looked if we are really sleeping, and yes, in fact we were really asleep. Then a couple minutes later, he didn't fall asleep this time. He heard that noise again. So he jumped out of the bed again, turned on the light, and he see that the door to our room are open, and he was sure that he closed them. So he walked to our room and there was that poof in our room, in the middle of our room, and it was upside down. So if you know what a poof is, you can put a lot of things inside, and my parents, being engineers, they have a lot of cables, a lot of random computer parts, and everything was inside that poof. So when my father grabbed that poof, and picked it up. Everything just went flying from it. Just everything, like there was a whole lot of things. Like it was poof where you would put everything that you don't know where to put it, you would put it just in there. And my father, to that point, he was trying to be logical, and he was like, maybe it's one of my children and they're really good actors and they know how to pretend to be asleep, even though before they weren't that good actors. But he said that it was impossible for anybody to do that with that thing, so to just place it upside down without spilling anything, without single thing just falling out of it. It was just impossible. And it was also really heavy. I remember that thing. At 11 years old, I wasn't able to drag it. I wasn't able to drag it. My brother wasn't able to move it. It was really heavy because there was a lot of stuff inside. So we would certainly, nobody, except maybe my father, would be able to just pick it up and place it upside down. And to do that kind of thing without a single thing dropping out of it and spilling out, like it's some Houdini shit, I tell you. Decided to call his aunt. She was my grandfather's sister. She sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but she was an amazing woman. She was really Catholic. She started a praying group in her church. She was really devoted. She dedicated her whole life to God and everything. But she also had a gift. So you might not believe in it, but she was helping police to locate the bodies of murder victims. Well, not only murder victims. And she stopped when they started to accuse her of being an accomplice to that murders, but they couldn't find any connection with her and that crime, because the crime took place on the other part of Poland and she was in the whole different place. But that was the moment when she was like, oh, I'm not going to help you with anything. And she was also going to people's houses and helping them with paranormal. So if anybody got problem with hauntings, they would call her, and she was doing all of that for free. So my father called her and she came to our apartment. And I remember my mother saying that every time she visited us or we visited her, she was reciting like children's poem in her head, because she was sure that that woman could read your mind, because that woman she was on a whole different level. So she was walking through our house and she was like, well, yeah, there is a lot of ghosts in your place. I was like, oh, we kind of know that. And she was like, those ghosts are from the cemetery. They're just visiting. And those ghosts that are just visiting, they are not bad. They don't want to harm anybody. But there is also that dark energy here. And somebody, like some of your guests or somebody who visited you, must have brought that dark energy. She told my mother that that thing is in our bedroom, so in my sister and my brother's bedroom. So she asked us to wait in our parents' room. She locked herself alone in that bedroom for a good 15 minutes, so not that long. We don't know what she was doing in there. We don't know what she was doing in there. I would really want to know, but I don't know. She was alone in there. And when she came out, she was like, oh, okay, everything's done. There's nothing to be afraid. And you could really feel when she was there, it was getting like lighter and lighter and lighter, and atmosphere was shifting to the, like, you know, it was lighter, not only the light but also in the atmosphere. It was getting better and better as she was in there. So when she walked out, she was like, yeah, everything's done. My mother was, but what did you do there? There were no black figures anymore. Nobody was walking, nobody was talking, there were no smokes, nobody was throwing a pillow anymore. And we also had like closing and opening cabinets and doors. It was no more. Everything just ended when my aunt came and did something. I don't really know what she did, but it really helped. But she told us that because our apartment is so close to the cemetery, ghosts will be visiting us. And she was right. Like, we still have some footsteps or some, you know, occasional visiting ghosts just whispering in the corridor, because now we have a corridor in our house. But if you know to hear more of the haunted stories, because after that, when I was in high school, our bathroom became haunted, and it was really haunted to the point when I, in the middle of the night, I was 17 and I went to sleep with my parents in their bed. So yeah, if you would like to hear that story, I can record it. So yeah, but that's all about our major hunting and our haunted apartment. And the thing is, we still live there. And yeah, we had some big incidents like haunted bathroom or whatnot, but overall things are good. So yeah.